In the name of Allah, most compassionate, most merciful. You are watching Hadi TV. Following the previous programs, we reached to this point that in sexual education, we should learn how to say no, how to negotiate with others. Today, again, Dr. Mergati, who is here, and she's going to explain for us and make example about this saying no. What is it? And have you got any example in a context in which you have worked on?
Thank you very much for inviting me for this session too. Before moving to the way we can empower people to say no or negotiate their sexual behaviors or sexual relationships with others, I would like to mention two main points about sexual risk behaviors, because I learned from you before starting this session that our discussion is going to be focused on sexual health and sexually transmitted disease. So what I want to remind actually to viewers and you as well is that the collective way of thinking is very, I think, is very dangerous, because it ignores that individuals are committing risky behaviors no matter which society they are living in. We cannot really, in terms of sexual health and sexual risk behaviors, we cannot think collectively, because, as I mentioned, and I repeat it, that's individuals within the context committing risky behaviors. This is the first point as an introduction, actually. And the second point is that the concept of risk is very, very dynamic concept. It's not static. The risk is always changing. It changes from one community to another, from one person to another, and from one situation to another. For example, a young person commit to a sexual risky behavior, and this risk can be very different from another situation that the same person is committing or behaving. So this is very important to keep in mind, that we cannot really think collectively. We have to be careful about the members of societies who are doing risky behaviors. And having said this, and we have to go back to community and to see in which way we are ignoring the member of society, and in which way we are ignoring them and their risky behaviors, because we cannot really dismiss at the point that the members of society have very high impact on sexual health or sexual health promotion of that society.
You mean that this ignorance, the member of societies are ignored from what? From sexual education or sexual health or knowledge about it?
Due to cultural construction of sexuality among different generations, we confronted with this problem very, very largely.
Why?
In Islamic societies. Yeah. Just let me give you an example. As I mentioned before, there is a wide gap between generations in terms of sexuality information. And as you may know, the young generation has their own subculture of sexuality, and they can behave in a different ways of from their own parents were doing. This cultural difference and creating or developing subcultures causes the gap between parents and children's. But again, this new generation getting information from my point of view, from wrong resources, without checking it with their parents, without learning the issues from their parents or their teachers within a good sexual health framework, they're going to wrong resources, and peer pressure in Islamic society is seen very clearly. I can see from my experiences that the young people are committing sexual risk behaviors behind the closed doors. Nobody knows what they are doing. But still, they are carrying cultural beliefs that they have to keep themselves very pure and they have to keep their, I call it landmark, like virginity. And they do everything just keeping their virginity. You know what I mean by this is the sexual risk behaviors is not just losing your virginity, is so many things, and the parents are not aware of this. We have to be careful because this is the way they can involve with risky behaviors and transmit it and get sexually transmitted disease, which we can see widely in our context.
So you mean that although the children are going to many sources which would give them not true or correct information, they accept some of their customs and cultures, like virginity as an example that you say.
Yeah, it's true for girls actually, because the concept of virginity doesn't exist for male young
as an example,
youngsters. Yes, but it's still the only things they're concerned about it is virginity, because as you know that this is very clearly said in Islamic materials that the premarital sexual actions are totally forbidden. So they know this. And what is the evidence for not doing premarital sexual actions? According to my experiences, in this context at the moment is virginity for girls. So the boys going through all risky behaviors because they know about it and they get this information from wrong resources. They involved with the porno sort of things and very erotic materials that Muslim families have no control on it because they don't know about this sort of resources. And what we have to do, and I think this is our responsibility, to aware families about this sort of resources and to teach mothers and how internet works. Because most of them that are my clients, they don't even know how to start a computer and how to use the internet. And what I actually suggested as a solution to learn from their own children how to work with this new resources and new mass media and sort of
in
things.
The members of the family.
Oh yes, and because of the culture of hierarchy and parents sometimes few parents actually nowadays they don't believe their own children. They don't believe they're so smart and intellectual human beings. And they know how to work with internet, computer, and different resources. So they don't trust them. And what I'm trying to teach them is how to learn from their own children. This will give them good opportunity to learn about their children's perspectives, not just teaching them internet, not just teaching them computer. When they're talking about internet and resources, the children are so innocent and they will give their parents enough information about what they think and what they know. So that's a very good solution, I think. And what I'm trying to do in my work to teach parents how to learn from their own children. It will be very surprising for you maybe because I conducted a group of healthy young people in one of the universities in the context I'm working at the moment, and they are supporting each other and they're empowering each other. I'm not saying that the whole members of this group are very, very good boys or good girls. they are actually taking members from different groups of young people, girls and boys, girls who are doing maybe from Islamic point of view wrong things, and boys who are committing very risky behaviors. And I think that's the community members themselves should recognize these people and to help each other to fix their risky behaviors.
You mean that in this, in this group, it is the individual who helps the other one?
Exactly, because if I want to, as an expert, if I want to go through this community and tell them what is right, what is wrong, it's not going to work because it's not going to be effective preventive program, I believe. We have to use the members of community themselves to empower them, as you mentioned, how to negotiate risky behaviors and how to suggest each other to promote their own health. As long as they know what should they do to protect themselves, they've got enough power. They've got enough power to say no for risky behaviors. At the moment, I'm very concerned about ignorance again, lack of knowledge, and lack of good communication between young people and adults as parents, teachers, policymakers, and experts like myself. And actually, I'm lucky enough to go through to community because I believe community-based approach and I believed community development preventive programs. So I could manage actually, but I'm just one person and I need really good hands from around the world.
What had happened in the Islamic society and Islamic context about this sexual health and this saying no, maybe the groups or about this point, about the ignorance that you say?
That's right. When I started to do more search in Islamic materials in terms of my own specialty and in terms of sexual health, and I really shocked by seeing that the Quran emphasis on good relationship, intimacy, and all those concepts that we already talked about, and saying that teaching us as the followers how to enjoy our own sexual lives and talking on and on, more and more about our human beings' rights. But still, when we are talking in Islamic society, I mean, when we want to talk about sex education or risky behaviors or risky groups, at-risk groups, but still we reluctant to talk about it. And we still think, oh, it's very shameful. And I cannot believe that it's sinful because in contrast with other religions like Christianity, we're not thinking that doing sex is sort of sin and it's contaminating people, sort of things. Islam thinks it's a very holy relationships that we can create, develop between two persons. Having said this, in Islamic materials, but still we're not talking and we are keeping our Muslim children out of the discussion and keeping them behind the doors. But there are many problems. I can give you an example like child abuse because they don't know about their own bodies. They don't know, as I mentioned earlier, they don't know about harmful relationships. And very, very little girls in middle schools, they are abused without knowing what happened to them. And this is the one problem. The second problem is that as soon as they got to puberty, in adolescence period of life, they commit risky behaviors out of parents' eyes, and they cannot have good control on their children because they can go to schools. And as soon as they enter to university, the problem is becoming
more and more
and double. So we have to have good guideline for this issue because this sort of ignorance is very harmful, and it's it's sort of awareness or I can say the bell is ringing at the moment and telling us that the Islamic societies are in danger. With assuming that we are living in Islamic society, we cannot really ignore the spread of sexually transmitted
That
disease.
is because most of the people who lives in Islamic society thinks that no, as we talked before, that no, we never got any problem, any health problem like HIV, as you say, because we are Muslims.
Yes, but the most of Muslim, people are doing sex, no matter which religion they are following, and when they are doing sex, they have to be careful of the way to keep them safe. Most of the religion around the world have some guidelines, but the important thing is how we can use these guidelines to have safe sex. But at the moment, there is no actually systematic research in terms of sexually transmitted disease, because if we have such a things, if we become dare enough to do that sort of research, we can find the prevalence of STIs among even Muslim peoples. I'm not saying that the Muslims do not believe that the extramarital, premarital sex is forbidden. They do believe so. But they don't know how to protect themselves because they don't know details about their own bodies. They don't know details about safe sex. That's what's the problem. As an expert, I confronted with while I started to work.
You mentioned it before, but I want you to go on it again about who are responsible for this problem,
I think that all of us are responsible, but we need to believe that the community members are the most important. We need to respect young people and to recognize their rights and to develop a very friendly atmosphere for young people to be able to come to us and talk about sexuality related matters, and also it will give us opportunity to empower them to negotiate based on their own knowledge and based on the knowledge we are giving them, to negotiate with their the other members, their partners, and to keep themselves safe in terms of sex. And also families are very, very important, because the family structure is pointed out in all over place in Islamic materials. So parents, specifically mothers, are very important members of society for us, to empower them, to empower women to be able to talk with their children and teach them how to negotiate in all aspects of their own lives. Sexuality is just one of them. And also teachers training programs. We lack of this sort of programs. We need to teach them how to face with young people's sexual problems, and to teach them what is the sexually transmitted disease are and how to protect themselves if something happens. And also all this education should be faith-based programs. If we emphasize on faith, we can go through and we can progress in our programs. And it should be, but as you know, that the faith-based organization like mosques, like our religious leaders who are running this sort of organization, can be a very important arm for us to help. And I really seek and I really beg the religious leaders from this Hadi TV to help us to do these programs. But I'm sure there are many religious leaders interested in this sort of topics.
And you know that we have an email address in which we show it on our screen, and our followers can make their questions and send their questions to us. And Dr. Merghati Khoui, I'm sure that she's ready to answer all your questions.
And I appreciate in advance those who want to help us from the world, religious leaders, faith-based organizations, and also those organizations concerning sexual health, specifically for young people in Islamic societies. Thank you very much.
I hope so too. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for following us. Thank you. Goodbye.